Morning is a gentleman who's just been at his passion for a long, long time. He's Lyndon LaRouche, 89 years old, and his website is LaRouchepack.com. He's an economist, he's an author, he's a politician. He ran for president 5 different times in the Labor Party, then the Democratic Party, and in the 70s, the United States government tried to get him out of the race. Probably ask him about that. Mr. LaRouche, good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, fair shape for an old geezer.
You're not an old geezer, not even 90 years old yet.
Well, I'm waiting for 100.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And trying to fill up the base in between.
You ran for president 5 times.
Sure.
Yeah. And who are the people that didn't want you to be running for president?
Well, basically, it's the British element, Wall Street elements, that sort of thing, who realized that I was a danger to them, and I was a danger to them. I knocked off a few political foes in the process, got a few blows myself taken, and but I am quite content with what I'm doing. I'm on top of the world situation.
Oh, you really do. You always have videos out there. You're interviewing people all around the world. It's LaRouche Pack, and what's your vision with that organization?
Well, it's a need to go back to reestablishing the United States as what its original intention was, as a republic. We are, as a nation, in that sense, unique, but we have European opposition to what the United States was created to be. We had, I think the point is, just to go back a bit to get the picture in focus, Europe developed under the influence of people like Nicholas Acusa back then on the idea of a republic. There were various names it was called then, but it was essentially what we would call today a republic. Mm-hmm. So when Europe was emerging from the Dark Ages, this factor around Nicholas Acusa and people like him actually moved under various kinds of influences on them to move across the waters, the Atlantic in particular, but across the waters to other continents with the idea of saving the conception that the Renaissance had represented by going across the waters and to building up on the basis of what Europe should have been, to build up a republic in North America, effectively what you call a republic in North America, and that's what we are. We are the American version, as many people who migrated into the United States, we are the American version of what the intention had been for Europe since the Renaissance. And I believe in that. I think our republic is a perfect conception as a conception, even though it's been abused along the way. So I'm still there. That's my view. I'm really a follower of people like Nicholas Acusa, who built up the Renaissance in Europe, but then saw the trouble was coming in Europe and decided to move people across the waters into other continents to build up a republic which conformed to the original intention of the Florentine Renaissance of that century.
Well, we've been told that we are a republic, as you say, not a democracy. And a democracy, the old line is, Mr. LaRouche, that there's 3 fox and a chicken voting for what's for dinner. That's a democracy.
I don't know where that came from. It does sound like the rooster is crowing once too often.
That's right. Is that a fair statement, though? A democracy where people can vote and the majority rules, mob rule, and they can tell you or I what to do, and in a republic that you can't take away person's freedom? Is that essentially it?
Not so much. It depends what you mean by the word freedom.
Yeah.
Our republic was founded on the basis of Christianity, essentially, but actual Christianity, not some particular proprietary version. And we came over here. We succeeded in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which was crushed by the Venetian interests in Europe. But we continued on, and for more than a century, from the founding of the Massachusetts Bay Colony until we actually had a republic, we were of a rather consistent determination we were the bad times came for us. The worst times was when the head of the Venetian party took over in Britain under the that Venetian party as such, and took it over. And so we had to fight our way back. What we did is we built up in North America. We built up over troubled years of more than a century until we established our republic. We built up a conception of what a republic must be. And it's not any of these little simple kinds of things. It's really much more profound conception of what the nature of a republic should be. What is the nature of mankind? And I'm there. That's where we in the United States have gone in various directions among various groups of people. But essentially, as you look at our troubles today in the United States and in Europe, we see the whole transcontinental European Atlantic system collapsing. We see now that Russia and China are prospectively becoming leading nations. We should be there, too, as the leading nation, which we are by right. And we should be taking a key role with our tradition in building up a system of sovereign nation-state republics throughout this planet. If we don't do that, we're now at a point where the whole planet can go into a dark age.
But George Washington argued that we really shouldn't be in Europe. It's a land of eternal wars. Did I just hear you say, Lyndon LaRouche, that the United States government and military should be involved with forming these nations, helping these nation states become sovereign around the world? Is that part of our job?
We're in a situation where right now every nation in Europe is doomed, essentially.
It's up for grabs, isn't it?
No, it's doomed.
Doomed.
It's up for grabs in the sense that there are solutions. But as you look at Europe today, as you look at Germany, you look at Italy, you look at all these countries in Europe, all the European continent, the European Western and Central Europe, under British influence, is doomed right now. It's on the verge of a complete collapse. It's a chain reaction collapse now. That we base ourselves on ideas, the ideas of our republic, the goals of our republic. These are actually international goals. They belong to all people who wish to adopt these kinds of things. We left Europe in part. People immigrated into North America from Europe. We built a nation of one essential idea, the idea of the nature of the human individual. Mm-hmm. And that's what we are. And we are essentially the last hope. The situation is such that possibly, if Putin becomes president of Russia, and if the presently developing alliance between Russia and China takes place, we will probably be the third nation, together with those two, which initiates a global campaign for sovereign nation-states throughout the world. That is, the Earth should be populated by sovereign nation-states, which have a shared common outlook, but have their own distinct cultures. And that these cultures must cooperate for the cause of what we would call freedom, the freedom of the individual, the freedom of the person. And that has been our goal as a nation. That's our republic, that's the intention of it. And I have always been committed to that as long as I can remember. Could go die being committed to that.
We're with Lyndon LaRouche. If you'd like to join us, his telephone number to talk with him is 888-663-6386. Email Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. And we broadcast live oneradionetwork.com, now naturalnewsradio.com. Mr. LaRouche's website is LaRouchePAC.com, and we'll give you his 800 number as well. Mr. LaRouche, do you think that the money powers, we'll call them the money powers, that they are not separate when it comes to places like Russia and China and the UK and the United States, that at some point they're all in it together? Or is there really deep financial, political, philosophical, spiritual separations? There's some people that argue that at the top of the table when it comes to money, they still all talk with each other because they're all in it together. In other words, I'm talking about a more one world government idea.
One world is nothing but essentially the Roman Empire. Europe has always been dominated since the formation, even before the Roman Empire, has been dominated by what became the Roman Empire. For example, the British monarchy is not a nation; it's an empire. Mm-hmm. It's a group, and if you look back at the history of the Roman Empire, which went through many transmogrifications, actually 4 in total so far, we're still living under a version of the Roman Empire, which was set up in the 18th century, was set up from London. We resisted that. We resisted the British Empire, which was a new Roman Empire. It was actually established in that form in the late part of the 18th century. And that's what it's been ever since. So therefore, we are for the idea of the sovereign nation state, in the sense that a people has a culture, but we believe these cultures have a common intention ultimately, and that in the meantime, while we have our separate republics, we must cooperate, or if possible, on the basis of certain principles of commonality, and that we should be a world of republics, and we should be a world of cooperating republics to the ends of the human race, of human interest. And that leads us sometimes to different roads in culture, but it should lead us to a common end. We want sovereign nation-state republics, and we wish to cooperate with them to ends which we share in common. We may go by different languages and different other aspects of culture, but we essentially recognize that it's either we get rid of the empire systems which have ruled the world for most of the time that we know, and instead have a system of republics, sovereign republics who cooperate in what they recognize as certain common human interests.
And when you're using the term "we" here, Mr. LaRouche, you're talking about we as, say, Americans? Is that what you're saying?
That and also other nations. Mm-hmm. Our interest is, you see, that there are two systems, which it's been a long story. One is called the imperialist system, or the oligarchical system. And the oligarchical system was based on the assumption that the world must be ruled by a small minority of people in the image of the famous Zeus, Olympian Zeus, who the super race, who controls all the little people and mm-hmm. kills them when they become too numerous. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the Roman Empire has typified that. And there have been 4 different stages of the Roman Empire so far, since Rome was established. You had the Byzantine Empire after that. You had another interim empire, which was the old Venetian system. Then you had still a new empire, which became known as the British Empire, which is the fourth Roman Empire. And the fourth Roman Empire, Britain, now presently controls all of Europe, all of Western and Central Europe, where there's no sovereignty anymore in Western and Central Europe. There are no nations in Western and Central Europe. They're simply reference points. And therefore, the issue is to establish a system of republics, of sovereign nations, which are free of the oligarchical principle, which is the old Roman Empire. It is the mm-hmm. British Empire, for example, today.
So then what did you make then of the formation of the European Union some time ago that now seems to have a hard time staying together? Who was behind that? Who was behind
the British Empire? That's only the British Empire. Look at Europe today. Western and Central Europe today. They're all under one empire called the Euro system, mm-hmm. and the Euro system is run by the British. And it also has the Wall Street gang, which is an extension of the old British system. It always has been. That's been the opposition we face inside the United States, is that crowd.
So that's what, yeah, how are the British still so powerful? They're a small nation. They don't really have that much money. Is it the whole bankers, Rothschild, Vatican thing? Or?
Well, the Rothschild system is simply was something that was appointed by the British monarchy, mm-hmm. And it actually became the central feature of an empire, which meant the currency, the money systems.
The money.
Are all the same money system. For example, there is no sovereignty in any nation of Europe from Portugal to Russia. There is no sovereignty today among any of these nations. None of them are a sovereign nation state. They're all colonies. They're colonies of the British Empire.
And now it looks like the Eurobond is going to get into effect, and that's going to even consolidate that more?
Yes, well, that's the idea of it.
Yeah, with the Eurobond.
Well, that's only one part of it. Essentially, you have to look at this as plain, raw rape. It's not so much a system. It comes out as a system. But look, for example, you had a meeting of the British royal family and its group recently in London, or in Britain. And they declared that they're going to reduce the world's population from about 7 billion people to 1 billion people in a very short time. And that comes from the British monarchy.
Yeah, we've heard these stories. Is that true? There really is a group of people that want to do that.
Of course there are. There always have been. It's called the oligarchical system. The Roman Empire was the oligarchical system. The Byzantine Empire was the oligarchical system. The old Venetian system that took over from the Byzantine Empire and destroyed the efforts of Charlemagne. That's the same kind of system. Then you have the British Empire comes up as the new Venetian party, during the latter part of the 17th century, and that's what we are today. What you have is a money system. The idea of money as a ruler is the basis of the empire.
That's an oligarch.
We have a different conception of money in our republic. That's what we fought about. We have a different conception not of money as such, not as usury, but a system which a nation state sets up a fixed exchange rate system on which it regulates its currency in an equitable form in order to build up a nation. And we hope to cooperate with other nations of a similar bent.
We're with Lyndon LaRouche at 888-663-6386. Hi, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from out here.
This is to a caller. Hi. Go ahead. Caller, you on the air? Hello? Okay, if you call up and you want to talk to Mr. LaRouche, you have to say something when we pick up the phone, 888-663-6386. So give us your, you've been at this a long time, sir. Help us to understand your understanding of the money powers. Who we know that the Federal Reserve banks are privately controlled, right? They are run by banks. They're not.
They are now. Yes, they have been for a long time.
They have been for a long time. So give us an idea of take these bankers, the Goldmans, the Citi, J.P. Morgan, the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and how they are intertwined, say, on a worldwide basis. What's your understanding?
They're entirely entwined with the British Empire. There is nothing. We have no opponent except the British Empire. It controls us today. It is what we call Wall Street, is nothing but the British Empire. It always has been. We had a peace where we had been allied with the British against imperial forces in Europe. Where that peace came about, at which point we found ourselves in a quarrel within the United States, within two groups. One group was actually an extension of the British, the British East India Company. This is the end. This is the end of that war. Then we found ourselves, the Patriots, who had actually fought as allies of the British against that imperial force. We found ourselves trapped in the very empire which we had fought as an ally.
Yes.
Was not then an empire. It became an empire as a result of that over a period of times. And about what our fight was, what our Revolutionary War was to establish our independence from what was becoming the British Empire of that period. And we've been at war with the British Empire ever since. Now, the problem was, since we had won the Revolutionary War with an alliance with France, with the Kingdom of Spain at that time, and with the League of Armed Neutrality, who had allied to save us, to save our republic. What happened in 1780 to 82, a change came about, in which the British Empire began to divided the United States from France and from Spain, and also Russia, the Russian League also. So we then got ourselves into a weaker position as the British then came to attempt to destroy us. This resulted in a real civil war inside the North American territory, among those of us who believed in the heritage of our struggle for a republic in North America against the more powerful British forces. And by various hooks and by crooks, we have managed to survive as a republic up until recently. And more recently, since Bill Clinton left office, we have been nothing but a puppet of the British Empire that came with the 9/11 operation. 9/11 actually destroyed us as a republic.
So are you saying that under Bill Clinton, Glass-Steagall, and that was a turning point?
Well, it was a crucial point. I wouldn't say the turning point. The turning point came with the assassination of Jack Kennedy.
Jack Kennedy.
Jack was fighting the oligarchy. His father, of course, was of a somewhat different position, and his brother was also assassinated, was of a different position. Bobby probably was a tougher bird to deal with from the standpoint of a Republican standpoint.
And they killed him. They killed him as well.
That's right. Look at he was going to win the nomination for the Democratic presidency nomination. He was killed in time to prevent him from becoming the Democratic nominee, and as a result of Bobby's killing, we got Nixon, and we were on the way down. Nixon in 2001. And 19.
So talk to us about what happened then. Who was able to get Glass-Steagall in and repeal the Glass-Steagall?
That was Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt.
And then it was repealed under Bill Clinton at the end of his term.
Well, it wasn't. Bill was in a terrible state at the last, as you recall, the Monica Lewinsky case.
Right.
So at the last years of his occupation of the presidency, he was not really in full control of his own presidency. Bill is a person of a very strong opinion and would not like to say that, but I have to say that. I think he really believes it and knows it. But the Lewinsky case really was the thing that crippled him. So he came in sort of dazed from what had happened to him after the Lewinsky case and the following impeachment attempt. And so he was not paying attention to business at the last moment.
And who had
a big mistake.
Who had the power then to get Glass-Steagall repealed? I mean, who?
It's Wall Street.
Wall Street.
And it was London, because you know the history of the thing. From 1980 on, there was a consistent effort to destroy the fixed exchange rate system in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. It took a long process, and it was done under the auspices of the Federal Reserve System. And the Federal Reserve System was used under British direction as the instrument to destroy the sovereignty of the United States. And once Bill was out and 9/11 happened, 9/11 essentially created the circumstance which destroyed our lost control over our own constitutional republic.
Because they were be able to create this terrorism thing and be able to spend money fighting it?
Oh, they occupied it. They created it. The British created it. Wall Street created it. These characters created it. And we had people who were asleep on the switch. When Jack Kennedy was killed, and he was killed for a reason by people or a group of people known to me, when he was killed and then his brother was killed, remember what was going to happen. At the time Jack was killed, his intention had been to establish certain arrangements to defend our republic, to launch the space program, the other things he did, also to build up the NWAPA program. That was on but the launching of the Indochina War, the assassination of Kennedy, the ouster of the influence of Douglas MacArthur, who was a co-thinker with Kennedy on this policy. No long wars in Asia for the United States, that sort of thing. So, we were undermined. We were worn down. We were weakened. Certain things that had happened that destroyed our moral fabric of what we'd been as World War II people. So we were undermined, and we were worn down and down and down. It was also the corruption of our own people. Our people gave in to things they shouldn't have given in to. They abandoned the principles of our republic. They made terrible mistakes, which ruined us. Their desire for money, riches, got in the way of their patriotism, their eyes of their patriotism. So we were corrupted. We were corrupted effectively once they killed Jack. And that was a real reign of terror in the United States. And once they killed Bobby, too, the terror was great. Then the war went on, and the war became more and more in Indochina. The war became more and more rotten. More and more people were destroyed, demoralized by that prolonged war, as prolonged wars tend to do that. Prolonged, meaningless wars. And so we got into this mess we did. And we now have the baby boomer generation is essentially a lost generation. It has become a lost generation. Now we have a younger generation of young people over 25, up to about 40 or so. And that younger generation does have an aspiration to restore something which they consider decency in our nation. But they're often confused. They're often uncertain. They were raised by parents who had gone that way, the 68er way. And the 68er culture destroyed much of the morality of that generation and has passed on the diseases which it had acquired to their children generation. And so we're in a situation now where you have the generation, say, 25 to 40, 45, is the generation in which there is hope. There's a desire to get to something decent. There's also a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty. And my function is to try to bridge that. I mean, I come from this older generation, a World War II generation, one of the few survivors, and therefore I have a clearer head in terms of where we came from and where we're going than these younger people do.
Yeah.
But we do have a younger generation, over 25, in which there is a large part which really is trying to seek a way out of the mess we find ourselves in today.
Let's take a phone call for you, sir. What's your first name? Where are you calling for? Lyndon LaRouche. Go ahead. Hello? I don't know. We're having a little problem with the telephone here. Sorry, Mr. LaRouche. Who, in your opinion, then, was behind the Kennedy assassination?
The British.
The British?
The British Empire.
So they were also then, you write, behind 9/11.
Oh, it was. There's no question on 9/11. That's a fact. I know that fact. This was done, 9/11 was done entirely, as we have a 1-hour program which is broadcast, and is still being broadcast.
That's on Lyndon, that's on LaRoucheSupport.com, right?
Yeah. It was on, and it's actually now being repeated. It's going all over the place. No, there's no question about it. We know this. This is cold fact. The 9/11 was orchestrated entirely by the Saudi kingdom and the British monarchy. That's cold, hard fact. Not speculation, not interpretation, just plain fact. We have the money to prove it. Money trail to prove it.
And the purpose of that, then, the end result for these people that did it is what?
No, not for the people that did it. The people that did it were largely fools and stooges. It was done by the British monarchy as the monarchy as such, not somebody who influenced the monarchy, but the monarchy as such, and the Saudi kingdom. The Saudi kingdom and the British cooked up a vast money scheme of billions of dollars. They did it off the books, off the record, and they financed entirely and prepared under the immediate direction of the Saudi ambassador in Washington to the United States and other people of that sort, orchestrated and planned and conducted the biggest operation of this type in world history. And that was 9/11, under which we were put increasingly under a dictatorship, under a damn little silly old fool, George W. Bush Jr. And then this fat fool we have now, who is about to be carried out on in one of those document things you wear when you when seeing people to the movie edge. And that's what we have. And there's no question about it. It's cold, hard fact. It is not speculation. It is not interpretation. This is cold, hard financial and related fact. And we have the documents to prove it.
And that would be to install this dictatorship to have more control.
No, to destroy the United States.
To destroy the United States.
And they did.
And why would British And Saudis want to destroy the United States.
Well, the Saudis are nothing but an auxiliary of the British Empire. And they're the ones who've been used by the British to cause many of these problems. And it has the benefit of using an Islamic European conflict as one way of playing the game, but that's only the way of playing the game. It was the British Empire which has always aspired to destroy the United States ever since we were involved in the Revolutionary War of our own nation.
They've never gotten over that.
Never.
Never.
Because it's an empire. You have to understand, it's not a collection of people who are scheming. It's an empire. It's a sort of an ideology. It's like a religious belief. And this group, since the founding of Rome, with you have continuously in Europe a system of empire which is operated under different auspices, different names, but it's the same tradition. The Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire are a continuation of the same idea under somewhat different modified auspices.
I was under the impression, Mr. LaRouche, that after the war that the United States got in bed with Saudi Arabia and to protect them as long as they protected the oil and the dollar and all of that.
That's a myth. That was the interest of certain interests in the United States, the Wall Street interests, and the British together. You're looking not at a national interest, you're looking at a financial interest, an imperial interest.
So the imperialists made that deal, not just the United States.
It was not the United States.
It wasn't.
The United Look, this could not have happened if Jack had not been killed. Remember, Jack had a policy: no U.S. long wars in Asia. He was advised on this on General Douglas MacArthur. No long wars in Asia for the United States. The policy then was go with the NWAPA program. Develop the United States with the NWAPA program, which is still a viable option for today.
What are you saying, NWAPA? What is it?
North American Water and Power Alliance.
North American
Water and Power Alliance.
Water and Power Alliance.
This is still the viable option for the development of the United States. In other words, we have two large rivers in northern Canada and Alaska. These rivers have a great flow of water. It's because they're part of the Arctic system or the subarctic system. This water goes directly into the Pacific Ocean or the Arctic Ocean, and nowhere down into the United States to speak of. The NWAPA project was conceived on taking the great river flow in the northern part of North America, in the Alaska-Canada area, moving that water along the ridges down into the United States and down into Mexico eventually, and to use that water system as a managed system in order to change the water characteristics and the weather characteristics of the entire North American continent. Now, this project is still viable. It will still work. It, in fact, is the one program which will lead to an economic recovery of our United States. This would be a key part of that, which would remanage the water, so we would have a more equitable distribution of water across the whole territory of North America, which would end this whole drought and flood system.
That's fascinating.
This was about to be put into effect at the time Jack was assassinated.
Oh, way back then.
All right. Oh, these are long-term processes. We are so concerned, because we're taught to think that way. We think in terms of our lifetime, which is a couple of dozen years, which is the active part of our lifetime where we have much influence on things. And so but we fail to see that there's a continuity of culture and ideas within nations, and there are also conflicting kinds of cultures and ideas within nations as well as among them. And our republic the idea was moving away from the beginning, from its inception, moving away from Europe, which was, the opinion was then that the Europe situation was almost hopeless, as it was. And that we first had to go across the water. This was Nicholas Cusa back in that century who proposed this. We must go across the Atlantic Ocean and go into the lands across the Atlantic to cooperate with the people we would find there. And they build up a conception of what we would call a republic there, and hope, therefore, to build up on our republic to build up the means to inspire people back in the old Eurasian world to come along with us. And that has been always the intention of the United States, which came out of the Florentine Renaissance. And that this is my belief. This is my devotion. This is, in one sense or another, the implicit devotion of most American patriots who understand our history and take care of these kinds of things.
All right, so stay right there. It is Lyndon LaRouche, 89 years old, and fascinating historical stuff, isn't it? LaRouchePAC.com. LaRouchePAC.com. Also, I want to give you a phone number if those of you are interested. More information about his organization. It's 800-929-7566. 800-929-7566. And it's LaRouche, LaRouchePAC.com. For some reason, the phones aren't working properly. With Mr. Lyndon LaRouche, he's 89 years old, politician, economist, philosopher, author, and his main website is LaRouchePAC.com. Mr. LaRouche, can you give us some simple history on Israel and the United States connection with Israel?
Well, it's a fairly complicated question to get into.
Well, keep it as simple as you can, just to give us a basic idea.
Well, what happened? The Hitler phenomenon happened. It was horrible. It's hideous. And it's difficult for some people to realize how hideous that experience was. It wasn't only the Jewish victims of the Nazis. It was many other peoples were also victimized in that process. When people go through that process, they often undergo a change in their character, their personal character. They become rather savage in their eagerness to prevent themselves from being victimized as the people of their same group beforehand. So what has happened is the whole operation of Israel was largely orchestrated by the British Empire. Once Eisenhower had left the presidency, that happened. There was a change. Now, Eisenhower had a clear sense of what this was all about. But then the British played the game, and they played the Middle East game. Well, what you now got a situation in which there is a possibility of a peaceful solution of the ethnic conflicts in the Middle East, especially between the Arabs and Israelis. There are those of us, and there are many of us now, who believe that the peaceful solution of two nation states learning to live together side by side is now a necessity, that any other approach would be insane because of the effects it would bring. There is now a strong movement inside the United Nations, which is not always right, of course, on this issue. And a lot of the Israelis now agree that the time is long past, that peace, that settlement has to occur. There are a few which represent a very special interest who are nominally in power in Israel today, who are determined to resist that peace. To prevent that peace from occurring is to worsen an already dangerous situation. And therefore there has to be someone with a strong opinion. Preferably, there are some people in Israel who have come to that realization. The time has come for that. The time has come for a peace settlement between the Israelis and the Arabs, and giving the Arabs their sovereignty. And that should occur now.
But why is then the United States voting against the two-state solution in the UN?
It's not the United States, it's the President of the United States and his people associated with him.
The people who control the President.
That's right. This President is a puppet of the British. He's not really sometimes I wonder if he's even human the way he behaves. But the point is, this guy is an obstacle. He's an obstacle to our economic solutions. He's an obstacle to our political solutions. He's an obstacle to the well-being of most American citizens, as a matter of fact.
Did the British control George Bush, Lyndon LaRouche?
Of course they did.
They do all the presidents.
Well, the Bush family, Prescott Bush, was the guy who put Hitler into power in Germany. But he did it as an agent of the Wall Street British interests.
You understand?
The son, George H.W. Bush, who I considered a weakling actually, but he had a powerful financial background in his family, and the Bushes in general, our Bush League, they are not really ours. They belong to a special tribe, which is a Wall Street tribe, and all of them are generally have knighthoods or something like that from the British monarchy.
Yeah.
They're not really Americans.
Yeah. What is the? Wow. You say. What is the motive of the British Empire when it comes to Israel and Palestine?
Oh, it's very simple. Use them.
Use them for a war?
Use them for whatever you want to use them for. They are victims. They represent power. Why? Because the British Empire gives the power of their system as an empire, not as a nation, as an empire. It gives the war, and the British Empire can cut them off. The British Empire will often cut them off by getting them to have wars with each other and bleed each other to death. It's only people who are fools, like the typical Arab-Israeli conflict, which is initially an Israeli conflict. It's only fools who believe those mythologies which play into them. There is no reason for Arabs to kill Israelis. There is no reason for Israelis to kill Arabs. There never should have been that. That was recognized early in the history of Israel, at the beginning of the 1970s. It was recognized that this whole idea of a war in that region is a folly. That you had to have an agreement among as many of the Arabs as you could, and as many of the Jews going into the area, who became Israelis. And the idea of a peaceful cooperation, which requires some delicacy on the part of the Israeli leadership. And there were people in the Israeli leadership who recognized that. They recognized that the Arabs had problems because of cultural problems induced by the British Empire and other things like that before then. And we recognized, and I was close to this element of the Jewish community at that time, that we must have a peaceful solution in the Middle East. And we must even bend over backwards to a certain degree in order to take people who had been brutalized by these, various kinds of occupations in the Middle East and bend over backwards a bit in order to bring them into fraternity with us, knowing that if we could achieve that feeling of fraternity and common interest, that we would work our way through all these problems and come to a peaceful and profitable resolution. For example, the question of water. Every nation in the Middle East is faced with a water crisis.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And if we understand that and certain other things of that nature are necessary for all of the people of that region and for the good of the human beings generally, then we are going to bend over when necessary to make it possible to find a peaceful, profitable solution to the problem. And when people get egotistical and start to play empire games and butcher the other guy, brutalize the other guy, we create the very circumstances which may in the end come back and bite us.
We've read that one of the big factors in Libya is all the water that's underneath Libya. Is that true?
Not exactly. That's an exaggeration. This is a big power game.
Power game.
Big power.
Who's been involved with all of these uprisings in Egypt, Israel, Syria? Who's starting all this stuff?
Well, the time when Eisenhower died, or Eisenhower was out of power, and then Jack Kennedy died, the United States lost control of virtually everything.
With Kennedy's.
With Kennedy. Mm-hmm. But Eisenhower had the right policy on all these areas of diplomacy, strategy. Kennedy came in actually as a successor to Eisenhower, but with his own opinion. And Jack Kennedy, was actually a real hero of this nation. His brother would probably have been a better hero than Jack had been. He was a much more frisky young guy.
Yeah, he was pretty frisky.
And therefore, the end of Eisenhower's term and the killing of the Kennedys actually changed the character of the United States and therefore changed the character of international relations of the world throughout the 1970s on. We were never the 68er generation marks the end of the United States as I knew it. wasn't ended all at once, but the end of the trend, which had been the United States, was killed. And we're now in a position where we have to get it back, maybe with some improvements in understanding of the problems, but we have to get that back. The United States has to play a key role with some other nations in getting the world turned around so that we can come out of this thing alive.
But if these money powers have the power that they do to install presidents and control them, how can we, reasonable people, regain control of this system that seems like that they, whoever they are, control everything?
Well, they don't. They control actually nothing, because most of the money in the world today is worthless, unless,
of course, right?
Unless, it's going bankrupt. This thing is hyperinflationary. Mm-hmm. You are seeing on a global scale, at least a transatlantic scale, you are seeing a kind of hyperinflation, which is comparable to what happened to Germany in 1923. The rate of hyperinflation today can wipe us out unless, and it could happen on turning on a dime, unless we put in Glass-Steagall now. Mm-hmm. If we put in Glass-Steagall with the right accompanying measures, we can save the system. Not the way the money system is being used now, but we can save the system for the nation and for the people.
That would separate the banking and then the investment banks again like it used to be.
Well, that's one of the things you have to do. But now we've gone a long way down the wrong road. Now we're going to have to make a more drastic reform in order to give ourselves the effect as if this hyperinflationary process had never been turned loose. Mm-hmm. In other words, we're going to have to go through a reform. But the point is, we have not only a need for a financial reform, we have a people reform. We are killing Americans. And we are going to kill them at a higher rate unless we stop this nonsense. Mm-hmm. And we can do it. If we put in Glass-Steagall, we'll do the first step. Getting Obama out is the first thing. If you don't get Obama out, you're not going to have a United States. You got a choice. You either keep the United States or you'll get Obama, or Obama gets you.
But can't it be argued that a Perry or a Romney or anybody other than Ron Paul is controlled by the same people?
No, they're all controlled, essentially, by the same people. They may not know it. Some of them know it, and some of them don't.
They don't know it?
No, they're controlled by their belief in a system such that the manipulation of that system and their belief that that system is in their interest blinds them to the reality of what's being done to them.
Oh, I understand. Very interesting. Yeah, so they don't even know they're being controlled.
They do, but they don't. The guy says, look, it's my money. Ever hear the word my money?
Right.
Therefore, they put hope in their money where they don't put hope in their nation anymore. You have people who don't believe their nation is in their interest, and they hope that their money will be in their interest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to fix that, because we have to create a money system, which we can do, which will reorganize this blasted system so we can have security. And security means like a reform, like the typical kind of reform that we had made back against, that Roosevelt made against the Wall Street sharks then. Mm-hmm. We have to protect the people. We have to protect their interest in life. We have to give them the opportunity of a secure life. We've got to talk to them and deliver on what they need for their their family, the people that come after them. We've got to look at people as future-oriented, not like animals who come and die. We have to think of human beings who want their family and want what they've worked for to mean something in the future of this nation. Mm-hmm. And we've got to get in there and straighten this thing out. And we can do it. It can be done. Mm. It was attempted by Franklin Roosevelt, who did successfully pull this thing off back in the 1930s, despite the opposition of the money lords, Wall Street money lords. The same thing we face today, but this is more vicious than it was then. But the power of government, the power of our republic under its constitution, if used, can defend us against these horrors. It can bring back our nation to actually become stronger than ever before.
We have
that can be done.
Oh, excuse me, sir. Excuse me for interrupting. We have several emailers that they want to understand more before we get out of here, before we let you go, this whole British Empire, who these people are and how. Is it in the British, the British Empire that you've been calling the British Empire this entire hour, Mr. LaRouche, are these people part and parcel of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the IMF, the World Bank, the European Central Bank? Is this part of the British Empire?
You got to make one adjustment in the way you formulate that to make it clear. The British Empire is an institution. What is the nature of the institution? The institution is that of empire. Now, an empire knows no loyalty to a nation. Empires use nations as instruments, but the empire is based on the concept of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on the concept of money, which dates essentially from the old oligarchical system before the British Empire, or before the Roman Empire was established. We have been living under an imperial kind of monetarist system. That monetarist system, the idea of controlling money, defining the meaning of money, and the way you control it to certain political ends, is the empire.
Is the empire, yeah.
The empire is not what we think is a nation state. The empire is an institution. It's a predatory institution, which goes back to the old. Well, take the issue of the Zeus, the Olympian Zeus, against Prometheus. The human race is Promethean. The other side is evil. And what we've been living under is a system of evil which nations and peoples have been fighting to resist for a long time. And the time has come now that we have to go back to the idea of a true republic and end this submission to money-based empires. We do need a money system. We need it as a vehicle by which we can organize things the way they have to be organized. But more than that, we need the sense of a republic. We need a sense of a system of cooperation among, respectively, sovereign republics.
Mr. LaRouche, what would you think about just the basic idea of, rather than borrowing the money from the private Federal Reserve banks, that when Congress appropriates money, then the Treasury simply creates the money? It's still inflationary, but it's not. You don't have interest on the debt. What do you think about that basic idea?
Well, I don't think there's any that's workable.
Why?
Because money has no intrinsic value.
Right. But if we all agree to use dollars, and if we create $1 trillion, don't we just, everybody using dollars all suffers that inflation, and it's a fair tax then?
No, if you have a fixed exchange rate system of the type that Franklin Roosevelt set up.
To gold.
Which goes back, well, look, you had the dollar under Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
And when the Lincoln dollar was canceled, the greenbacks were canceled, we became the victims of again, the British Empire. So the idea of free-floating money controlled by these kinds of banking systems, in which the federal government is a victim of those systems, is not a free society. What you need is a fixed exchange rate system where the money is not allowed to inflate, but in which you realize the essential thing here is not money. The essential thing here is production. If we are increasing the productivity of the nation per capita and per square kilometer of territory, then our money, if at a fixed exchange rate, is valid forever. It is free of inflation or of any significant systemic inflation.
Fixed exchange rate would be tied in somewhere to something, gold, silver, or something else.
It'd be tied to contracts. It's the idea of contracts.
Oh, interesting.
That in other words, the first such system was established in the Massachusetts Bay Colony prior to the seizure of power over that colony from Britain. And the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the original one, actually was a model under its system of creation and management of the effect of a currency, which was anti-inflationary and progressive. In the best periods of our life in the United States, as under Roosevelt, for example, we had an inflationary resistant system. And that was in the immediate post-war period. Many mistakes were made, but they were nature of political mistakes under Truman. But the Roosevelt intention was, apart from the inflationary effects of war itself, was an anti-inflationary system. The problem that the Roosevelt administration had was that the costs of the war relative to production was so vast that we had an inherently wartime inflation in the United States. But otherwise, in effect, the growth of the United States under Franklin Roosevelt's presidency was an honest, high rate of growth. And as we saw under Jack Kennedy, for example, when he was president, we saw the same kind of tendency. This is an anti-inflationary system based on accelerating physical production in agriculture, industry, and technology. And as long as we are increasing our technology, increasing our productivity, and, in our ingenuity, and we're keeping things based on contracts, long-term contracts, those contracts which are actually the capital investment which makes society run. As long as those contracts are good, the nation is good.
Lyndon LaRouche, you ran for president 5 times. In just a couple of minutes, if you were president today, what kind of things could you do to help more people get to work? Is there anything that a government has in their toolkit to do that?
The government does have a lot of. Our Constitution provides our government with a toolkit to do about almost anything worth doing. It's sometimes doing it it does not come quite as fast as you would like to have it come, but it can be done. Now, I'm not just waiting for somebody to become president. I am waiting for somebody to become president to replace Obama. That's without doubt, and it wouldn't be Perry. What I'm looking for.
Who's your choice if you had to pick a choice?
My choice right now is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
My choice is the action which I have to take in my position and the influence that I do have, and that is to get this bum, the current president, out, and to make immediate reform actions which will save this nation from going into a hyperinflationary explosion. That can be done. You have to get this president out of office, or you will do nothing. If you don't want to get this president out of office this year, and before the end of this year, you're not doing anything.
Are you talking about impeaching him?
Well, he's virtually impeachable. The guy has committed crimes which are impeachable. He also is clinically insane.
Really?
And that's, yeah. Under the 25th Amendment provides for his elimination from office, and that can come very fast.
How would you prove his insanity?
Oh, it's easy. With him, it's easy. All you have to do is have the people who have the guts to do it.
Really? The
problem here is often in the United States today is that people who know what should be done don't have the guts to do anything about it.
And if you were president today, what are some things you would do?
You would have a dream.
We'd have a good time. Well,
we'd have a very good time.
It sounds like we'd have fun with Lyndon LaRouche in there. I don't know.
I don't have to be president. I'm a little bit old for that kind of job.
Well, Mr. LaRouche, you're really a pleasant man to talk to, and I love the deep history we got into. Could we do this again sometime? Because I learned a lot. I really did learn a lot from you, and I found it fascinating. Lyndon LaRouche, or it's LaRouchepack.com, and now you have an entire hour film that you put together on who was behind 9/11 that you believe, right? On this website.
Well, we happen to be some of the best informed people outside certain circles in the world on this one. We've been working at it for a long time.
And what's this video called?
What do we call it?
Well, we'd be able to find it. It's just on LaRouche.
Oh, you sure can, yeah.
LaRoucheback.com. Mr. LaRouche, thanks for spending some time with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Okay, have fun.
Thank you.
See you.
Oh, an interesting guy, huh? I've heard about and read about him for years, and it was an honor to talk with him. Lyndon LaRouche, 6 minutes after the